They used to say the Pacific skies belonged to the Japanese Zero. For the first years of the war, that sleek, ghost white fighter danced circles around anything America sent up. It climbed faster, turned tighter, and seemed almost weightless in the hands of its pilots. But no one in the 14th Fighter Group would forget the day that balance shifted, because the change didn't begin with a general or a tactician. It began with a grease-stained mechanic named Harlan, Wires, McPherson, and a trick so simple that most pilots laughed at it, until they saw what it did. McPherson wasn't built like any hero. He was short, round-shouldered, with a permanent smudge of oil under his fingernails and a way of squinting at people as though each conversation was a loose bolt he was trying to tighten. His mind worked like a machine, quiet, precise, never stopping. And that was exactly why men trusted him with their lives. A P-38 Lightning under his care performed smoother, climbed cleaner, and came home more often than not. But the war didn't give them much time to appreciate craftsmanship. In early 1943, the Americans stationed at Henderson Field on Guadalcanal were exhausted shadows. The tropical heat ate at their strength, mosquitoes ate at their skin, and the Zero pilots, fast, fearless, merciless, ate at their morale. The P-38 was supposed to bring equality to the sky, twin engines, long range, and brutal firepower. Yet in close-quarters combat, the Zeros still turned tighter, dodged faster, and slipped away like a fish from cupped hands. The pilots grumbled, cursed, and pushed their planes to the limit. But nothing changed. Everything began on the morning when Captain Ray Falcon Aldridge, one of the group's most seasoned flyers, stormed into the maintenance tent with a fury that rattled every toolbox. "My Lightning handles like a drunk cow," he barked, tossing his flight helmet onto the workbench. "Every time I bank left, she hesitates. By the time she commits, that Zero's already crawled up my tail." McPherson didn't look up right away. Instead, he wiped grease from his hands with slow, thoughtful strokes, then inspected the helmet as though it might reveal the secret. "Maybe you're a skinhead to dance a waltz in a knife fight," he said calmly. Aldridge glared. "Stop with riddles, Harlan. I need a faster roll. I need her to react the moment I touch the stick." McPherson rose, cracking his back with a sigh. He walked around the gleaming twin-boom fighter, hands trailing lightly along the metal skin. His mind ticked. The P-38's hydraulic systems were reliable but sometimes sluggish, especially in tropical humidity. The ailerons, climbing wires, control rods, everything worked, but not fast enough. Not with Zeros. Then it struck him, an idea absurd enough to make him smirk. He turned to Aldridge. "Give me 5 hours." "For what?" "For something stupid." Aldridge left muttering, half convinced McPherson had finally lost his marbles. But the mechanic was already digging through crates, spools of tension wire, reinforcement clamps, pliers, cutters. He crawled under the P-38's belly like a spider weaving something elaborate. Mechanics glanced curiously, crew chiefs raised eyebrows, but McPherson ignored them. Sweat pooled on his forehead, sliding down his nose and dripping onto the metal. He didn't alter the hydraulics, nor adjust the ailerons directly. Instead, he rigged a secondary tension assist system, a set of slim reinforcing wires that tied into the main aileron control rods. Not to replace them, but to help them snap back faster under load. A crude mechanical compensation. A trick of tension and leverage. A stupid trick. At least, that's how most of the crew saw it. By late afternoon, Aldridge returned to find the mechanic still half buried inside the wing. "What in God's name are you doing to my Lightning?" McPherson wriggled out, covered in grime, grinning slightly. "Tune up. A special one." Aldridge folded his arms. "This better not kill me." "It'll either save you," McPherson replied, "or you'll come back yelling at me. Which ain't new." The captain climbed into the cockpit, started the engines, and taxied toward the strip. As the props roared into motion, McPherson stood with arms folded, watching every vibration, every twitch. The P-38 surged down the runway, leaped into the sky, and climbed until it was a glimmering silver cross against the clouds. Then it began to roll. Left. Right. Fast. Even the ground crews stepped closer. Something was different. The lightning wasn't just rolling, it snapped into the roll, almost like it anticipated the pilot's input. Aldridge radioed down, voice sharp with disbelief. "Harlan, what the hell did you do?" McPherson just scrubbed at his eyebrow. Made her listen quicker. When Aldridge landed, he jumped out of the cockpit with the grin of a kid who'd discovered ice cream for the first time. "She reacts instantly," he said. "There's no delay. No slop. I move, the plane follows. That wire trick," McPherson said, "keeps the tension on the control rods during high-G turns. Hydraulics don't have to fight the slack." The other pilots crowded around him, bombarding him with questions. McPherson shrugged. "It's stupid. Simple. But it works." Word spread fast, too fast. Within 2 days, every P-38 on the field had the stupid wires installed. The improvement wasn't magic. It didn't turn the P-38 into a zero. But the gap, the terrifying gap that had cost so many pilots their lives, began to close. And it couldn't have come at a better time. On the morning of March 15th, radar spotted a major Japanese raid heading toward the island, bombers with a heavy Zero escort. The air raid sirens wailed, sending crews scrambling. Mechanics dropped tools, pilots sprinted for their fighters. Engines roared to life, shaking the ground. Aldridge's voice crackled over the radio. "All lightning elements, wheels up!" They thundered into the sky like a swarm of metal wasps. The Japanese formation appeared moments later, tidy rows of bombers flanked by nimble white fighters. The Zeros broke off the moment they spotted the Americans, swooping downward with the confidence of predators who had dominated the sky for years. The first clash was brutal. Tracers ripped through clouds, explosions dotted the horizon, spiraling smoke trails carved dark scars across the blue. But something was different this time. When the Zeros tried to roll away, the P-38 stayed close. When they dove, the Americans followed. When they turned, those impossibly quick Zero turns, the lightning snapped through their rolls with new precision. A Zero latched onto Aldridge's tail. He felt the shudder of enemy bullets chewing into his left boom. The Japanese pilot pressed his advantage, closing the distance. Aldridge banked sharply, but the Zero matched him. Then he rolled. Not a normal roll. A lightning-fast barrel twist that sent the P-38 corkscrewing sideways in a maneuver he could never have pulled off before. The Zero overshot. Aldridge fired a concentrated burst of .50 caliber rounds, tearing straight through the Japanese fighter's engine. The plane erupted in flame and tumbled downward. Across the sky, it happened again and again. P-38 pilots rolled, twisted, evaded. Maneuvers previously too sluggish to be useful now became deadly counters. The Japanese formation, expecting easy prey, instead found a pack of fighters that could no longer be outmaneuvered. Within minutes, the Zeros disengaged, peeling off and scattering to the east. The bombers never reached Henderson Field. When the battle ended, pilots taxied back with trembling legs and wide eyes. They climbed out of their cockpits, some laughing with relief, others simply sinking to the ground in exhaustion. McPherson, who had watched the fight from the runway with a tightening knot of dread, counted the returning lightnings. One by one. Most came home. A few didn't. War never granted perfection. But that day, the field didn't overflow with grief as it usually did. Instead, there was disbelief and pride. Aldridge walked straight toward McPherson, helmet tucked under his arm, bullet holes stitched along his fuselage. "Harlan, your stupid wires saved my life." McPherson nodded, though emotion tightened his throat. Glad they held. Held, they had. Even under the stress of combat, the wires maintained tension. Simple reinforcement. Nothing taught in manuals, nothing ordered by command. Just an idea born from frustration and a mechanic's instinct. Within a month, the modification spread across other bases. Field reports noted improved responsiveness. Engineers studied the trick, refined it, and eventually implemented a more standardized system based on McPherson's concept. It became one of those unofficial war stories, rarely recorded, hardly glamorous, but whispered with respect by pilots who owed their survival to a genius disguised in oil-stained overalls. The war raged on for years, but after Guadalcanal, American pilots no longer feared the Zero. They respected it, yes, but they fought it on equal terms. The P-38 became a symbol of precision, power, and adaptability, earning a fearsome reputation among Japanese aviators. And behind that shift was one man who never sought credit. McPherson remained in his tent, working quietly, wiping sweat and grease from his brow, tightening bolts, inspecting wires, listening to engines the way musicians listen to violins. Whenever a pilot returned alive, he simply nodded once and went back to work. After the war, most men went home to medals, ceremonies, and parades. McPherson returned to a small Nebraska town where he repaired tractors and farm trucks. Only a few veterans ever visited, and when they did, they'd pause at the sight of the old mechanic leaning over an engine, squinting at a stubborn bolt. "He doesn't know," they'd whisper, "how many lives he saved." But maybe he did know, in his own quiet way. On a dusty shelf in his workshop sat a single object he kept polished, a fragment of twisted aluminum from a wrecked Lightning, gifted to him by Aldridge. On it was carved a simple line: "For the stupid wires that saved us." McPherson never bragged about it. Never framed it. Never told the story unless pressed, really pressed. But sometimes, late in the evening when the sun dipped low, he'd run his fingers over the metal and sigh softly. Not with pride. With gratitude. Because in a war full of horrors, he had contributed something that gave men a chance to come home. And all it took was a stupid wire trick.